Hey everyone, how's it going? So I'm here for the final week of ShakeTube 2018. This is a buddy read hosted by Steve Donahue, Jason of Old Booth Chapter and Verse, Mark from Words Everywhere, and myself. And we've done a read-along of many different Shakespeare plays. Steve, Jason, and I did different sets of Shakespeare plays, and then Mark did Shakespeare's sonnets. I actually have yet to go watch Mark's video on Sonnet 20, because I want to give Sonnet 20 a good read before I go and watch Mark's video on it. So I'll be doing that today, hopefully. But my play for this final week was The Two Noble Kinsmen. And this is probably the last play that Shakespeare ever worked on. And he didn't write the entirety of this play. In fact, he wrote only about 2/5 of it. He wrote Act 1, Scenes 1 through 3, Act 2, Scene 1, Act 3, Scene 1. He didn't write any of Act 4, and then he wrote, I think, the final 3 scenes of Act 5. And the rest of it was written by John Fletcher, who was kind of Shakespeare's successor as the main playwright of the acting company that Shakespeare worked with for most of his career. And so yeah, and the story of this play is taken from The Knight's Tale, from the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, which incidentally I also read this year. But so this story opens with Theseus, Duke of Athens, about to get married to Hippolyta, the Queen of the Amazons. But the wedding proceedings are interrupted by 3 queens who come to Theseus from Thebes, because the king of Thebes has vanquished their husbands' armies and won't give their husbands proper burial rites. And so they implore Duke Theseus to declare war on Thebes and get their husbands' bodies for them so they can give them proper burial rites. And so Theseus agrees to do this and goes and declares war on Thebes. And in Thebes, there are 2 knights, Arcite and Palamon, who are, I believe, cousins, who fight for Thebes, even though they don't like the king of Thebes that much. They fight for Thebes sort of out of duty. And they love Thebes, even though they don't love the king. And so they fight against Theseus in this war. Theseus defeats Thebes pretty easily, and Arcite and Palamon are imprisoned. But what happens while they're in prison is Theseus's sister-in-law, so the sister of Hippolyta, his wife, just happens to be strolling near the prison, as you do, I guess. And they both just look at her and fall in love. And immediately they're kind of at each other's throats. Each of them thinks that he deserves to be her husband. So basically from then on, it's a series of events leading up to them having a duel with each other over who gets to marry Emilia. And eventually Duke Theseus actually agrees to sort of stage this fight for them, and decides that whoever wins this fight will get Emilia, and whoever loses will be put to death. So I'm going to start with the one big downside to this play for me, and it's that a huge chunk of it isn't written by Shakespeare. And because it's very clear that John Fletcher is not as good a wordsmith as Shakespeare, the poetry itself, just line by line, is not as good in the sections written by John Fletcher as those written by Shakespeare. And so that's unfortunate. I wish that Shakespeare could have just written the entire play. But that's okay, because the poetry by John Fletcher is not bad. It's just very clearly not as good. Aside from that, I really like this play. I think it's a shame that it's not as well known as a lot of other of Shakespeare's plays. I find the dynamic between Arcite and Palamon really compelling. Because despite the fact that they're dueling over this woman, they clearly still love each other and don't really want to fight each other, despite the fact that they feel compelled to because of their love for this woman. And there's even this kind of intimate scene where one of them helps the other put on his armor, so that they can fight to the death, basically. And it's like this weirdly intimate scene where it's almost like a wife putting on her husband's armor or something like that. And they just kind of reminisce a little bit. And I find that dynamic very compelling. I think on the stage it could be incredibly moving. And there is a side story of the daughter of the jailer of the prison where Arcite and Palamon are kept near the beginning. And his daughter is in love with Palamon. But Palamon doesn't reciprocate her love, and so she goes mad, kind of echoing Ophelia from Hamlet. And so she goes mad, and eventually the way that she's cured is that this man, who's just called the Wooer, in this side story, none of the characters actually have names. It's just the jailer and the jailer's daughter and the Wooer. And the way that they cure her is the Wooer pretends to be Palamon. And so she agrees to marry him, thinking he's Palamon, and it actually cures her of her insanity. That's an interesting story. I think it raises some interesting moral questions, I guess, because I'm not sure how I feel about this deceiving the jailer's daughter into thinking that the Wooer is Palamon. But and it feels like that could be very exploitative on the Wooer's side. It's hard to tell based on the text. I guess whether the Wooer is being explicitly exploitative might depend a lot on how the actor playing him presents the part. But on the other hand, that aside, it does cure the daughter of her insanity. So yeah, I don't know. It's just sort of a gray area, and it seems like a really interesting moral question to raise in this play. And yeah, basically, I think this is just a wonderfully told story, and a really moving story. And more than any other of Shakespeare's plays, I think that this one earns the title of a tragicomedy, because what you notice, or what I think I notice in at least Shakespeare's plays, the tragedies usually end in death of some sort, and the comedies usually end in a marriage of some sort. Not all, but most, I think. And but in this case, this play ends with both a marriage and a death. So in terms of Shakespeare's oeuvre, it really, more than any other, deserves to be called a tragicomedy. And I think that that's a very interesting, bittersweet ending of this play. Definitely, I think, could be incredibly powerful done on the stage. I wasn't able to find a good production of this one, unfortunately, which again just speaks to the fact that it's kind of regrettable that it's not as well known. But yeah, I think this play is wonderful. A great way to end. I guess it was a great way for Shakespeare to end his career. And for me, a good way to end ShakeTube. We'll see if ShakeTube 2019 happens, but that won't be for another year. So, but anyway, I will say goodbye to you all for now, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.